Is an internationally recognized eco-lifestyle expert, educator, innovator, serial entrepreneur, and author of Eco-Renaissance, Co-Creating a Stylish, Sexy, and Sustainable World from Simon & Schuster. Founder and CEO of Eco Fashion Core, a greenhouse of brands, including B2B turnkey sustainable fashion and home manufacturer MetaWear, regenerative organic cotton farm project Reset, affordable, size-inclusive QVC mass-market organic lifestyle brands Farm to Home and Seed to Style, and new D2C eco-creation retail platform, Yes And. Also founder of Under the Canopy, producer of Thread documentary, Driving Fashion Forward, and co-founder of Good Catch, Beyond Brands, and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, Marci has been instrumental in driving authenticity, environmental leadership, and social justice worldwide for over 3 decades. Board member of the Textile Exchange and Organic Center, Organic Trade Association, and recipient of countless awards, Marci is also featured in the book Eco Amazons, 20 Women Who Are Transforming the World, and as a Henry Crown Fellow of the Aspen Institute. Please join me in welcoming Marci to the stage.
Thank you so much, Caroline and FIT, for having me. And as you can see, I've been busy, so be careful what you wish for. No. So this has been a 30-year-plus journey for me, and it really started in the food system. A lot of people ask me how I started my career, and I actually, at a very young age, embraced the whole organic and natural health and wellness movement, and dove headfirst, read a book called Living in the Light, which inspired me tremendously, that there's more than what we just see with our naked eyes, right? And the reason I wrote the book is the premise is, through the lens of design, we can change the world. If you appeal to people at a visceral level, right, aesthetically, what they see, what they touch, what they taste, what they feel, then it's, oh, by the way, it's also regenerative, organic, recycled, fair trade, ethically made. That's the and. And so recently, as Caroline mentioned, started a brand called Yes And, which is my life mantra and the opening chapter of my book. And I just noticed, or my amazing team, shout out to Maddie and Allie, noticed the yesand.style URL is missing off here. And I want to kick off by saying, if you want to buy anything at yesand.style, use the code LOVE22 for 22% off. And be sure to follow Yes And on Instagram. So my mission has always been, to revolutionize the fashion industry through education, innovation, collaboration, and really inspiring people about why we make these changes, why we can be the change, eat the change, drink the change, and wear the change we all wish to see in the world. So as Caroline mentioned, I coined the term eco-fashion in 1995, really because having started in the food system, just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We start with our first basic need being food, right? And then we evolve, and it's clothing and shelter is our next basic need. Everybody touches clothing. Everybody touches fashion in some way or another. And when I had that epiphany, that's when I said, somebody needs to do this. Of course, didn't know what I was getting myself into, but when you Googled the term eco-fashion 30 years ago, I was the only listing up there. And today, I'm very proud and excited to say it's become a very ubiquitous term for this movement. And so today, I am the CEO and founder of Eco Fashion Corp, of course coming full circle after a lot of other entrepreneurial ventures, which really is a greenhouse of brands modeled after the old school house of brands, because everything that we do shares common soil and the DNA about doing well by doing good in the world, no compromise, and that's what Yes And is all about. Right, so we have MetaWear, which is our turnkey manufacturing platform to help other brands, retailers, and designers to get where they want to go. And then we have our Yes And brand, which is an extension of MetaWear, and 2 brands that we launched during COVID on QVC called Seed to Style and Farm to Home. So just to give you a little bit about, the DNA of my life work, and one of my favorite quotes, you'll notice I quote a lot because I'm very inspired by such incredible wisdom that continues to, be woven through the course of my life and and hopefully you'll take it into yours. And vision is the art of seeing what's invisible to others. And really that just says, as creators, set a vision of where you want to go. And don't be afraid to pivot along the way. Just keep going and be focused on the ultimate vision. It's really about the journey. It's not about the destination. So have fun, put your seatbelt on, and enjoy the ride. And so my work has always been about scaling impact, and I've framed that within my book, Eco Renaissance, in 5 different, what I call the 5 C's: creativity, consciousness, connection, collaboration, and community. And so I'm going to speak a little bit today, and then Caroline and I are going to do a bit of a Q&A to really talk about, this concept of the ecosystem. And the eco-renaissance is a rebirth of humanity, right? That's what a renaissance is, built on this awakening and this awareness that we are all a part of a collective ecosystem, right? Nature is not outside of us. The environment is not, something that we go outside and walk in. It's a part of who we are. We have a symbiotic relationship with our environment and the ecosystems around us. We breathe out carbon. Nature is supposed to breathe in carbon and breathe out oxygen, which we breathe in for our survival. So we never want to lose sight of that relationship. And when I used to speak at FIT and other schools, a decade or more ago, a lot of people were very, very new to this. But, it gets me very excited, and I pinch myself every day that the younger generations just inherently get this, because the internet has really changed the game. And you can pull the curtain back and you can ask those questions: who made my clothes? What's in them? Where are they being made? And those are very important questions that really start at the source. And what I've been saying over the last few years since the pandemic is, while there's been a lot of suffering, and I don't make light of that, there's also been a gift that's been given to humanity that, we've reset our priorities. We've gone back to our own personal source, right, within ourselves, and reset those priorities, looking at the light within us. And that is very metaphoric for going back to the source of our products, because everything starts with energy, right? The seed represents life. And we're made of energy. So just remember, everything we put in, on, and around our bodies is an extension of who we are. And keeping in mind we're living in this modern day Star Wars, it is all hands on deck now. I mean, you can just see some of the headlines, and I'm sure you're all every day thinking about, the things like, it's not even climate change anymore, it's a climate crisis, right? We have to leverage the power of fashion. It's no longer business as usual. Waste, water, energy, climate change, social justice, these are all the spokes in the wheel of eco-fashion that we need to address. Don't get overwhelmed, because it can be daunting. There's so much change. I mean, relatively speaking, we really are at our infancy. And so we can decode the endless complexities of this industry today through technology, through inclusivity, and we can accelerate change that, as you probably saw from the title of my talk, at the intersection of regeneration, circularity, and technology, right? Because these are forces that are now, at our back, that are propelling us forward and redefining or rebooting the fashion industry with a different lens. So most of you probably are aware that, fashion is a $3 trillion industry, right? The overall fashion, textiles, footwear, and that, you'll hear all kinds of statistics out there, but it is one of the largest polluters in the world, next to coal. People will say it's the second largest polluter of air and water, right? 20% of the world's freshwater pollution is coming from textile treatment and dyeing, right? You have, our landfills are filled with textile waste. Climate impacts, well, depending on what you include, if you include agriculture, you include, transportation, you'll see numbers as high as 8% of the world's carbon footprint is coming out of the fashion industry. So it's no longer about doing less bad, it's about doing more good with our industry. And it's also not about staying ahead anymore. When I started my career, it was very much like a unique selling proposition. And today, it's about not being left behind. I truly believe every single company, brand, retailer, designer, if you're not thinking about social and environmental accountability and weaving that into your strategies, you will be out of the game. It's just a question of when. So MetaWare was started really to meet brands and retailers where they are and take them on this journey by creating a turnkey solution, right? We make it easy. It's almost like buildable. You know, what stories do you want to tell? Is it fair trade, recycled, low impact, you know, circular, regenerative, made in the USA? What products do you want to make? We do knits, wovens, sweaters, denim. We make women's, men's, kids, baby, home, pet. And then what are your volumes? What are your price targets? And what are your brand or brands you want to use? And then we construct the supply chain from the raw materials or the farm all the way up to the finished product. And we navigate all the complexities of the supply chain by virtue of oversight, quality control, inspections, obviously the sourcing and the procurement of the materials. And then we connect the story, right? Source to story. Farmer photos, assets like, videos of the factory workers. And soon we're going to be embedding ESG data into our blockchain technology platform, which at the end of the product cycle, you can scan a QR code. I have, if anyone wants to see this after the talk, I have one in my new Yes and garment. And it takes you on that journey with you, right? So it's about experience and it's about, people being engaged in this process. And so, with MetaWare, we are about digitizing our supply chains as a value add and redefining the whole supply chain model, embedding, accountability in a win-win-win way. And that is the name of the game. This industry has been so broken for so long where it's about, buyers talking at their vendors and vendors, getting crammed down where they can't make a livelihood, they can't make money, and then canceled orders. And it's just, really not a sustainable way to work, not to mention, obviously, all the impacts to air and water pollution. So we're in this kind of new chapter in humanity and in the fashion industry where it's about partnership and collaboration and what we call eco-creation. Because as anyone who knows me knows, my favorite number is 11, because 1 + 1 = 11, right? We're stronger together than we are apart. So as, designers and fashion business majors, make sure you reach out and you look for support and you look for others who share your core values that you can partner up with. Because today we're all creators and we can design any reality that we wish to see. We just need to co-create better systems across categories, distribution channels. We're all in this together, and from mass to class now, we can connect content and commerce to meet consumers where they are and give them what they're looking for. So this is by far one, in my top 3, right? We cannot solve today's problems with the same consciousness that created them, right? This slide really sums up where we are today. If you think about flying over planet Earth and you look at these buckets of just dark, toxic fumes and degraded water in cities. It's almost like looking at a moldy piece of bread, right? Where you just see these pockets that are just destroyed. And now, we have to clean up what we've created that's very dark and dirty and unhealthy for us. We did that, and we can undo that by putting our brains, our creative spirits, our work together and accelerate this change, because it really is, and I'm sure all of you, every day, are taking in what we're experiencing out there. When I was growing up, climate events maybe were once every 5 years, and today it's almost like once a week, and it's getting scary. And I'm saying that from a call to action, because this is no longer a choice. This is an imperative for all of humanity. So let's plant seeds of consciousness and cultivate them and teach people how to climb that ladder of consciousness and look from a different perspective. How many of you seen the movie Don't Look Up? Right? If you haven't, check it out on Netflix or wherever it is. But it really is a reminder that, even though we're living in this Star Wars, the dark and the light, as I said earlier, we're all on the same planet. We all have to appreciate and celebrate Mother Earth together. So this is our Reset project. This is where it all starts for MetaWare, for Eco Fashion Corp, and really for my life work. I call myself a soil junkie because when I'm in the farms with the farmers, it's my happy place. It's like water for chocolate. And this is also where food and fiber interconnect, right? Which is why I had that sort of aha, that you can't support one part of the equation without the other. How many of you in this room eat or have eaten organic food, right? Great, everybody. Costco is the biggest buyer of organic food in this country today. It's not Whole Foods, right? So it is about, connecting those dots and understanding the methodologies of truly sustainable agriculture is built on building soil health. Right? When you build soil health, it's about crop rotation. It's about cover cropping and green manure and building ecosystems, vital ecosystems and nutrients in the soil. And in this photo, I'm standing on one side, I've got lentils, and on the other side, I've got cotton. Because there's drift in agriculture and all these crops are growing side by side. And, since I started my career in wellness and in food, I co-founded, as Caroline mentioned, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which today is the world's largest holistic health nutrition school and has certified almost 200,000 people as health coaches in now, I think, 160 countries around the world. And, when I started to understand agriculture and understand that soil, is really the skin of the earth. You look at our skin is the largest organ in our bodies. It's our primary organ for absorption, right? So it's not just what we put in our bodies that matters, it's also what we put on our bodies. People are walking around with asthma and allergies and skin conditions and psoriasis and eczema and chemical sensitivities and haven't really stopped to think about the fact that we wear textiles 24 hours a day, basically, right? When you think about also your sheets and your towels and your robes. And, so really thinking about what goes into those textiles, from the growing to the sewing and the processing, actually does matter. And so people don't realize soil is actually one of our greatest solutions to climate change. Why? Because when soil is healthy and vibrant, it sequesters carbon out of the atmosphere. There's your absorption, the skin of the earth. But when soil is broken, when it's dirt because we've oversprayed it with chemical cocktails and GMO agriculture, what happens is we turn that alive, living ecosystem into dirt, which then reflects the carbon back up to the atmosphere. And then even water, when it rains, no longer gets, retained in the soil. It just runs off with all those chemicals into the water systems that are ultimately polluting the people that are depending on that water for drinking, for bathing, for living, right? So, there are 570 million farms around the world, and, 500 million of those are small family farms. And India is the largest cotton growing region of the world, and with a third of the world's textiles being cotton, that's a very important part of my life work, is looking at cotton as a part of the solution, because remember, not all cotton is created equal. And so, cotton is less than 3% of the world's agriculture, but represents over 10% of the most harmful insecticides and pesticides out there. And biodiversity is so key. I mean, this is a topic that, seems so like, wait, we're in the fashion industry. Why are we talking about biodiversity? But it matters because we rely on the Earth's ecosystems for our food, for our energy, for our oxygen, to live. And, right now, species are declining at over 1 million a year. They're at an unprecedented rate. And, there is an incredible threat of extinction of another 20% of the species that are on our planet today. So apparel is such a huge contributor to biodiversity loss, to soil degradation, as I mentioned, and water pollution, and our natural ecosystems. And 70% of those impacts are at the fiber and material level, which is why together we need to make material change. And so with that, we start at the fiber. And I talked a little bit about, organic cotton, which also regenerative cotton. I know probably Caroline and I will dive a little deeper into this. But, ultimately at the Reset Project, and Reset stands for Regenerate the Environment, Society, and Economy through Textiles. We start with regenerative cotton, which means we're starting to build the soil health, and the soil health and the biodiversity back in the soil. We then, after 3 years, can get certified organic. You need a 3-year transition to get to organic. And then ultimately, we go all the way to biodynamic, which is Demeter certification, which means 10% of our cotton farms are actually being preserved for biodiversity. So I was in India in January, and I had butterflies landing on me while I was picking cotton at our farm, and I literally started crying because it was so moving. And for those of you who've ever been to a cotton field around the world, you know, cotton is one of the dirtiest crops in agriculture. Right, so it really does start with, regenerative fibers. It starts also with food waste. We can take things like banana, and now you're probably hearing about pineapple and orange and all kinds of other, food ingredients that are being used in the fashion and textile industry. Even a resurgence of hemp, and looking through the lens of biomimicry at fibers like bolt yarns that are mimicking spider silk. Right? And then you look at, the circular economy, and there's all kinds of new fibers that are coming out that are incredible, that are taking the old and bringing them to the new, cradle to cradle, right? The cradle to cradle principles, renewable energy, water stewardship, social justice, material health, and material reuse. Those are the 5 principles of what we call the fashion positive movement, which is an extension of cradle to cradle, which means what we take from the earth, we have to give back to the earth. The fashion industry has always looked at this like linear model. We can just keep it, exploiting, depleting, using our resources, and then throw everything in the landfills. Well, that's obviously not sustainable, and we've hit that wall. So today we have to look at what do we have out there so we don't have to create any more synthetic materials like virgin polyester, when we have companies like Unify Reprieve that took 25 million plastic bottles out of our landfills to make the Reprieve yarns. Think about, 2.5 million plastic bottles are being thrown away every half an hour, right? We need solutions, and fashion can be a very powerful part of that solution. We're also looking at carbon net zero as a big hot topic in the fashion industry right now. So fibers like lensing, tencel, lyocell are now carbon net zero certified, right? Where that means that there's no carbon footprint when they make that fiber. And these are things, a new lens that we have to be looking at the fashion industry through, and looking through, the product design and development lens, not the marketing lens. In fact, when I started my career, I guess maybe a decade in, I was doing business with Target, and a lot of the initiatives that they were looking at, really were through the lens of marketing. What kind of story can we tell? And today, marketing's being told to go away. Like, we'll let you know when we have something. And all of the developments and all of the progress around sustainability is being driven by, their product development and design. So, been doing this for almost 3 decades, and I'm still learning new things every single day. And I think that's another part of this movement that is so exciting to me, is this is just scratching the surface of the fibers and materials that haven't even been designed or innovated or created yet. I mean, it's almost the sky's the limit, going back to, if you can envision it, you can create it. That's how everything we see today, is here, right? Somebody thought about it. And the entire fashion industry, and I'm on a board called the Textile Exchange. The Textile Exchange is the leading organization that connects all the stakeholders in the supply chain. And we made an industry-wide commitment to reduce our carbon footprint by 45% by 2030. And we have almost 900 members. All the biggest companies in the world really are part of the Textile Exchange community. So never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Start somewhere, right? All I'll say here is it's all hands on deck. So if you're not a part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. And that includes your shopping habits, right? So when you're shopping, don't just run to your quickest fast fashion retailer and not think about the impacts that retailer is having. Look at the core values and the brands and the companies and the products that you're supporting as a consumer, and be sure to vote with your dollars. And we're seeing that rise. We're seeing where people are thinking about the sustainable development goals, more, in a more conscious way, and they're learning about how every choice that you make professionally and personally matters in this world, right? This is your future, and there are now 3,500 B Corps in over 70 countries around the world. This is a new form of governance where it's not just about profits. As a business, leader, as an entrepreneur, right, the 5 Ps really to me have always represented good business: people, planet, profit, passion, and purpose, right? So it's not a single lens any longer. It's a paradigm shift. And, today, 77% of millennials are actually saying that they're concerned about the environmental impact of their products, and they will switch brands if they know that the brands that they want to get behind are actually, offsetting carbon emissions and doing good work in the world. And so it really is now about a shift, from fast to slow, from moving into supporting authentic efforts, non-toxic, durable. It's a behavioral change, right, that we're looking at. And that includes thrifting. That includes, keeping items longer that you have, repairing items through, organizations like, the Renewal Workshop, or yourself, right? A lot of people are now in this sort of makers community and reinventing products, recycling, reusing, remaking, repurposing, swapping. I mean, these are all, front and center now, and just the beginning. And so that really lends itself to these new business models, right, that are all about circularity and this, recognition that, we can reuse everything that's already out there. We don't have to start from scratch, right? Look at companies like ThredUp, Rent the Runway, The Real, right? And, moving into this different kind of thinking where we are designing right out of the gate, a long-term thinking around the products that we're designing, right? It's not about, as designers, operating in a silo either. And it's about, connecting that design process, the fibers and the materials that you're choosing, and the life cycle of those products, and where those products are gonna go, after, the first consumer has worn them. So even at Yes And, we've introduced something called Yes And Repeat, which is a resale program. And I think more and more companies are joining this, this movement. And there's a great app plugin called Recurate that, there's a lot of companies that are making it easy, and this goes back to eco-creation. So everything is connected to everything else, right, as said. And now we're talking about, we've looked at circularity, and now we'll talk about technology, right? So this is where it gets really fun, because this is a whole new chapter in manufacturing. I always, joke now that like eco-fashion is growing up and becoming smart fashion. Not that eco-fashion isn't smart, but we're looking at smart technologies and marketing differently, retailing differently, even wearing differently, because consumers are hyper-connected, and fast fashion really is yesterday. How do we slow it down through the power of technology, not just digital, not just social, not just the internet, which have changed the game, and not just, looking through the lens of circularity, but how do we increase speed to market, reduce waste, reduce our chemical use. And so, Kornit is a great example of that. It's an on-demand printing technology that's certified organic, that allows for customization and, an ability to take garments and print on demand, so you don't have to go into a mass run of screen printing, and you don't have to waste garments or use toxic inks, because it's all, a net zero impact. And in addition to that, there are so many other innovations. So I talked a little bit about blockchain. So this is the blockchain that Yes And is now using, that we're bringing into the MetaWare ecosystem, where you can scan that QR code and you meet the makers and you learn about the certifications, all the inputs in the product. And soon, as mentioned, by the end of the year, we're going to have carbon, water, waste, energy, and wage metrics in our blockchain. We'll be piloting that and building on that over the years. But that's where this industry is going. It's kind of crazy, right? Like I'm a soil geek and but I love this stuff, right? Where we can actually, go down this, take people into this world that is really interesting because it affects them. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to go there, they don't have to. They can just wear a beautiful garment and say this is great, I can look good. And if they want to, know that they also can feel good and do good in the world through just making that choice, that information is there for them. So it's very optional, it's personal, and not everybody wants to know, but it's there in case you do. So we talked about on-demand printing, and there's also mobile commerce, obviously all the online shopping, the digital wallets. Obviously 2/3 of your generation, the millennial generation, is shopping online. So all the technologies that are coming are from the virtual world, and it's just getting started. MetaWare does have a vision down the road of opening a smart factory that's based on lean manufacturing, so that would be robotics and all the other smart technologies, which we're calling our factory of the future. Whoops. And so you may be familiar with a lot of these technologies as well. Companies like Clo and SETI, which are doing amazing 3D fit sampling technologies, which saves a lot of that sampling process back and forth. There's also, SETI is a cloud-based version of Clo, and you have a fabric simulation, so you can actually try on garments using your technologies, and it actually reduces the sampling process by 75%. It increases speed to market. It decreases our returns because of more precision, and the production of a digital garment on average saves about 3,300 liters of water per item, which is enough for one person to drink 2 liters per day for 3.5 years, right? And the process also emits 97% less carbon than the production of a physical garment when you use, 3D modeling. There's also the Internet of Things, right? Smart clothing, responsive wear, AI, all the data that's out there today that allows for us to really, experience sales and forecast trends in ways that we never could before. Again, making us more efficient. And then there's virtual and augmented reality, and which is kind of mind-blowing to me as I dive into this world of technology. Companies like DressX that are, virtual showrooms, literally, that, you can have the combination of the virtual and the physical. So for those of you who love social media, and, anyone follow me at Marci Zaroff, you have the ability to actually change your outfit without actually putting on a different physical garment, right? These are things that are just coming to market, but really, poised to reshape the fashion industry. So remember that alone we are smart, together we are brilliant, and this goes back to collaboration and the power of collaboration. And these are just some of the brands and retailers that are jumping in, the companies that are jumping in to drive change and driving disruptive business models. And it's no longer about making fashion sustainable. It's actually about making sustainability fashionable. And a lot of these companies are doing a great job doing that, looking through the lens of cooperation. Whereas, when I started in this career, again, I mentioned I came out of the food side, and because it was the natural and organic food industry, there was this sentiment of, I've got your back, right? We're all in this together. Where then I would go to like Magic or Coterie or Fashion Trade Show, and it would be like, watch your back. Everybody's out to get you, right? Like, I think that has changed, and now everybody's realizing we need to hold hands and we need to move together, right? We need to be driving this change and innovating, through communication, through technology, locally and globally, through this digital revolution, and changing our mindset, right? And looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, looking at climate action as paramount in our industry, and addressing all the spokes in the wheel of change to drive collective action, and to, speak to the values of fashion revolution, key, transparency, right? It's all about traceability and transparency. And, there's a lot of greenwashing in our industry going on, right? So know what you're doing from the standpoint of one step at a time. Don't, it could be so overwhelming in this movement because there's so many moving parts. There's so many ways to think about change. And I'll just leave you with a few thoughts. So one, as I kicked off this presentation, work is love made visible. It's one of my favorite quotes from a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And, love is the energy that fuels alignment, flow, abundance, change, right? So we're rebirthing this industry. So start with, go deep into who you are and you as a human being and the world that you want to live in and that you want to see, right? And empower all the stakeholders along the supply chains of the companies that you're working with and for. Number 2, remember, we do not inherit this land from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And as the mother of 5 children, Yes. We have to remember that the seed is life and that we have to love Mother Earth and protect our children's futures, right? To stay relevant, we have to be accountable and we have to build tangible strategies with timelines and roadmaps. And then third, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And that is a Lao Tzu quote to remind you that it's one step at a time. It's not business as usual anymore. We have to move forward, not back. And don't underestimate, ever, the power of fashion to hit our carbon goals across all industries. I mean, everybody touches textiles in some way or another, airlines, the food industry, governments, right? These products and services, so if you're in, fashion, you're in textiles, you can really go to any industry. Even at MetaWear, we have a blanks program, a merch program. We're working with musicians and artists and influencers, So join the regeneration generation, personally and professionally. Embrace a circular mindset, and let's all embrace smart fashion so we can all wear the change that we wish to see in the world. And this is our URLs and our social media handles. And now I guess we'll do some Q&A, and then please don't be shy, ask questions. And if you post along the way, of this talk or questions or anything, any of the slides you might have shot, at the end of this, I'm going to pick 3 people just off my social media, tag Marci, Zaroff, and Yes and I will pick 3 people and give you a copy of my book. So with that, thank you everyone for being here, and I'm going to move on.
Thank you so much for that. It was, we have a lot of amazing guests in here, and it's always nice when they can share a little bit more color before we dive into your career path and what's brought you here, and any advice you may have for all these young students starting out who want to make a difference in the industry. And a lot of the students enrolled in my class want to launch their own company as well. So a lot that we can learn from you. So
well, thank you for having me.
Of course, we're so happy to have you. What was your journey up until when you decided to coin the term eco-fashion in 1995?
Yes, so I touched on this a little bit, but people often ask me, what's my fashion background? Well, I got best dressed in high school, so given that I grew up in South Florida, that doesn't say much, but don't tell anyone. I always had a deep affinity for business, and I met the founder of Aveda when I was still in my teens, and I just went, whoa, and I looked at what he was doing with Aveda, where, how many of you are familiar with the Aveda brand? Probably most of you, right? So his whole philosophy was very much about design, and he was a hairdresser, and he led with, even back in the day, was so ahead of his time with, inclusivity and diversity and connection to nature, and it just resonated for me. So when I started IIN out of my apartment here in New York City, I always had in my head, okay, it's about the yes and philosophy. If you give people food that tastes good, and, oh, by the way, it's also fair trade, organic, gluten-free, better for you, healthier, then it's about no compromise. And so then I partnered with Horst, the founder of Aveda, who wrote the foreword to my book before he passed away, and my book is dedicated to him. And we then connected food and beauty and opened the first Aveda concept salon together in New York City in 92-ish. And then through that work, it became very apparent to me that there was a missing link in that wellness equation, right? You can't support one without the other. And people today understand organic, natural food. They understand clean beauty because, of course, all the big retailers are lining their shelves today with, the clean beauty brands and the, cleaner food brands. And then I said, okay, there's a miss here, and that's when I coined the term eco-fashion and dove in head first, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's great. You touched on it a bit in your speech, but what would you say is the essence of what makes your company sustainable?
So I would say a holistic model. I've always approached my work because when I started, I couldn't go to a factory and say, hey, can you give me, organic, sustainable, circular? It didn't exist. So it really is about connecting source to story, right? The winning formula is the right product, the right price, and the right story, all connected, and it has to be, backable, right? So if you're telling a story, you don't go out and tell a story if you haven't, mastered the product, right? Because the product really is the key that unlocks, that authenticity, right, in the story. And consumers today, especially the younger generations, see right through that. So for us, transparency is something I've been talking about for 30 years, right? It's like this hot, word now, but I've built my career path on that concept.
Yeah. And what do you, for someone who's sitting out in the audience today, what do you think is the first important step in starting your company that way, holistic approach?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much opportunity out there, and we're just at the beginning, relatively speaking. So what are the products that you want to do? Is it high end? Is it mass market? Is it, clothing for kids? Is it clothing for men? Is it clothing for women? Whatever category you want, set a vision, set your mission, right? Define your core values, go through a typical business process. The thing about designers oftentimes is, they just want to design. They want the creative process. But either make sure you go through the business process, and there's so many guidebooks out there today and so much support you can get on the internet, or bring in people around you that know that. Because, Horst, the founder of Veda, one thing he always said to me is, it's about the people around you that help you, get to that vision. We can't do this alone, right? And that's why I had that quote, together we're brilliant. We can get so much farther, so much faster. So make sure you get mentors, you get, other people that, you can share ideas with, or make sure if you're building a company that you hire people that complement your skill set so that you have a more holistic approach to the work that you're doing, because you really do need to operate like a business. Sustainability isn't just about people and planet. Of course, that's paramount, but it's also about, making sure you're sustainable financially.
Yeah. And what do you think as a consumer? It's so daunting to try to move yourself towards this end goal. Where should you start?
So I would say reading labels is super key, right? Going online and learning about the companies, what their own values are. There's a lot of companies, as I mentioned, that are slapping, sustainable on their tags. They don't even know what that means. Maybe they changed the light bulbs in their office, and now all of a sudden they're a sustainable company, to LED. But that doesn't count. So really, it's at a product level. Look for certifications like the GOTS certification, right? The Global Organic Textile Standard, which is a certification that mirrors the USDA's organic food standard that you probably have all seen, the NOP seal on your food products. That is a federally regulated term. This is not a marketing proposition. Organic is actually governed by the United States government, Department of Agriculture, right? So when you see the word organic on food and you have that seal, that means something. And the GOTS standard is our equivalent, because the 5% allowances in the food side do not relate to what we need in textiles, right? We need dyes and finishes and things that aren't counted in the food side. So that's why we created the GOTS standard, which I was a part of that creation in the 90s, and brought the first, product to market that was GOTS certified. Also, fair trade certification. Or in the textile exchange, we have the organic content standard or the global recycled standard. These standards, a lot of work has gone into them, but make sure you also not only read labels from the products that you're buying, but that the standards are legit, because there are actually even companies out there making up standards, right? The seals that they self-proclaim are like legit seals, but they're really just marketing tools that they're putting on their products. So I would say reading labels, and then ultimately vote with your dollars.
Yeah, that's great. Another point that is so challenging when someone is launching their own company and getting going for the first time is customer acquisition and kind of building up that market and that base. How did you get that going? Because you have a robust followership out there, and I'm sure that wasn't easy to come by.
I've always approach things from a very grassroots kind of place. So as an example, when we launched Yes and the official launch is actually coming up. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of inside information that nobody knows yet because the press release, I think, is going out tomorrow. But Nigel Barker just joined Yes and Eco Fashion Corp as our creative director.
Wow.
So a lot is brewing in the pipeline. But how we started, rather than playing that very expensive customer acquisition game that, really means you need a lot of money to kind of go down that black hole to paid media to build a brand, it was all about partnership deals, right? Partnering with the Rodale Institute, partnering with the Ram Dass Foundation, because I'm a big believer in, the language that Ram Dass has infused into his work about love and unity and, us in it together. And so it's just words of wisdom and inspiration that we've, created this collection or co-created it. We partnered with the Women's Earth Alliance. We've partnered with influencers that are out there marketing and building something that they now believe in, because ultimately they want to get behind things that they believe in, but they can't find them, right? So, but they also have to make a living. So, I always say as an entrepreneur, I feel like a little kid in a candy store because I get to do what I love, make a living and change the world, right? So, yes, and why not? Not why not? So think of it through that, through that lens. But always grassroots marketing. Go where the lowest hanging fruits are. Go where the people that ultimately are going to support what you're doing, and then build from there, right? So, get your proof of concept. Get your, build your audience in a more organic way, because organic marketing is actually, a better way to build customer loyalty too, because people, they're not just buying the shirt, they're joining your brand. And that's really the mindset that I've always had.
Wow, yeah, that's great. What do you feel like is the hardest part about running? Not your own company, all your multitude of companies, your brand portfolio.
Okay, so I would say, as a business owner, leader, it's like mind, body, right? It's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the spiritual, and it's finding that balance, and that means being there for your team, and, and when someone has, is going through something, or there's, we're all human beings, right? At the end of the day, it's not just about an employee or somebody who's, working with you or for you. It's about the personal element. So, connecting with people, and it's not hard, it's just time consuming to make sure that people feel heard. And I get so busy that I really try to make sure that I say to people, as these guys know, just get on my calendar, right? Because I think it's very important to spend that time, and meet people where they are, also from your team, and because you have to all support each other, because one negative link can actually bring the whole thing down. So if you have a vision, you have to stay positive, because we are made of energy, right? And energy wants to flow. So the law of physics is when energy is blocked, it won't flow. Negative energy creates blocks. So it's that, and then it's the other side of the hardest part, is the perpetual raising of money to fuel your dream, right? So, the reality of building a business is, as you get to each level, you may need to raise the fuel to help you scale, and that's like the bane of my existence. My least favorite part.
Yeah.
The necessary evil.
Yeah. How about the best part?
The best part. So I would say probably when I'm out there driving partnership deals, and then they come to fruition. So, I've launched the first sustainable textiles for Whole Foods, and for Aveda, and for Target, and for Macy's, and for Bed Bath & Beyond, and for QVC, and, and over the years, that reward that they believe in me is so fulfilling. It's almost like with IIN, it's less about how much money did I make when I exited the company in the 90s. It's more about how often I meet people that come up to me and say, that school has changed their life. And I think, being around my team, being around the people that are sharing this journey with me and celebrating together when we have a win is so incredibly rewarding. It just means that, we're moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. What do you feel like has been the most effective at implementing this widespread change that you've seen happen?
I think it's the connectivity of, my approach, which gets a little bit, complicated or daunting, for like an investor, is to be activating and educating consumers at the same time that I'm activating and educating my internal ecosystem, because we ultimately are the microcosm and the macrocosm, right? At the same time that we're working with brands and retailers on the B2B side. So I always say from farm to consumer, right? That full vertical integration, that full, efficient source to story, clean model where we can, all be in this together across the entire supply chain all the way to your closets. That part is really, has been very effective because we're bringing everybody along the ride with us.
Yeah, that's great. How did you first find production to get your company started? Because I always feel, to me, that is the scariest part of ever launching my own company. It would be to find the right factories. And not only that, you obviously had a vision to make sure you're finding the right kind of production companies.
Yeah, so I'm definitely the quintessential entrepreneur. So persistence, tenacity, conviction, what doesn't kill you makes you smarter and stronger, and right, like walking cliche. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to, go after what you want. And so for me, it was really, flying around the world, literally. I went to Turkey and Peru and China and India and, and other places, looking at what exists, right? And saying, okay, what fits with my personal goals, where I want to go, and one step at a time. So find a factory, or find a partner like MetaWare, or find, a consultant that's going to work with you to navigate what that vision is. And, because not everybody can get on a plane and travel around the world, right? So today, there are so many amazing online resources, right? You have the Textile Exchange, you have, Fashion Revolution, you have so many organizations and Remake and, that are supporting, this movement, and those didn't exist. So whether it's, MetaWare and Eco Fashion Corp, or it's all these other nonprofit organizations, or it's companies like us, there's a lot of support systems out there today that, and factories are wanting to change, but they know they need buyers, they need retailers, they need designers, because they can only, we're all in this together, so they can only do what they want to do when they have people that want to do it with them. And that's why collaboration is so important, right? Some of the biggest companies out there are driving much needed innovation like waterless printing and, systems that are just don't serve us in this industry.
Yeah. So as I was, reading your bio leading up to today, and also, you touched on it a bit as you were lecturing before, but what exactly is regenerative cotton?
Yeah, so just to build off what I said earlier, so when you have, soil, right? Soil is meant to be alive, and, very much when it is, grown, when cotton or other crops are grown in soil that is healthy, you could think of that as the immune system, right? The soil is ultimately, when it's healthy, going to grow healthy plants. And then those plants are ultimately going to be more resistant to germs if they're healthy and strong. Think again, immune system, if you take care of yourself, you're going to be more resistant to bugs, germs, disease, right? Because you're healthier, you're stronger. Same thing with when we're regenerating the soil, we're building the health of the soil. And the practices we use to build that soil health mean give it nutrients, right? It's like taking vitamins or getting lots of sleep or eating good healthy food. We're using different methodologies that will serve the health of the soil, like when you rotate other crops, as I mentioned or showed you on the screen, you actually have the ability to bring the nutrients of those crops into the soil as well. When you use cover cropping or green manure, right, you have these crops that will break down, you know, these remnant crops, and all the nutrients from the leaves and the crop cover are going to disintegrate into the soil, again, building the soil. When you have low tillage or no tillage, you're not breaking up the topsoil using heavy-duty machinery that ultimately is breaking up that living ecosystem. Because what you want to create with regenerative farming is a carbon sponge, right? A sponge that actually is going to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. And that is the idea of regeneration. And that's why all over the world right now, including at the government level, including at the farmer level, including at the brand and retailer level, everybody's talking about regenerative agriculture, because sustainability is no longer enough. We can't sustain the soil as it is because we've degraded it so badly through chemical agriculture. By using GMO seeds and toxic chemicals, think of, you know, like when someone has cancer and they go through radiation and chemotherapy. Well, historically, and this is changing little by little, but you're killing the good cells just as much as you're killing the bad cells, right? So when you spray with pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, and all the chemicals that are being used to kill the bugs, you're killing the soil health too, killing the living, you know, bacterias and the ecosystem that ultimately we depend on. So we want to move away from that. We want to regenerate, but we want to regenerate without all the chemicals, because when you build that soil health, you don't want a cycle where then you're destroying it while you're rebuilding it. And that's why I'm also an advocate for organic agriculture, because to me, regenerative is fundamental to organic, and biodynamic really is the OG of climate smart agriculture.
Wow, okay, all right. I think I feel a lot smarter for knowing that. Thank you. So you have your hands in a lot from not only fashion and food, but to media and as an author of a book, and also production, you know. How do you keep it all? How do you balance it all, I guess I should say?
First I'll say sleep is overrated. No, just kidding. Yeah, I mean, it really goes back to what I was saying about, you know, it's about the people you surround yourself with, right? Like I feel very grateful, and I appreciate, you know, all of the people around me, and you know, whether it's, you know, on the sourcing side, we have an office in India, we have a team on the ground there with, you know, 5 full-time people, and my GM worked for me at my last company under the canopy. So he knows me, he follows me around India to my farms, my factories, and he, like, you know, really gets into the trenches and shares my core values. And so when I'm not there, I can sleep at night knowing he's got my back, he knows what I'm looking for, he knows what I ask, he knows what I want, and he shares that with me. So he also is, you know, very committed. And same thing with here. You know, I've learned in my career, when I first started, I used to want to do everything myself, right? Like, because nobody knows what they're doing. That was like, you know, brain fog, you know. Today I've learned, like, there's no way I can get where I want to go with that mindset. So I've learned over the last 30 years how to delegate, how to support, and then move on and go to the next thing. And that is fundamental to my work, especially as I continue to accelerate, you know, all of my work, which is all connected. It's not, it looks like, oh my God, you're doing so many things, but it's like an ecosystem, right? And everything that I do supports something else that I'm doing.
Yeah, that's great. So on that note, talk to us about your Thread documentary. You know, how did that come about?
So I partnered up with a woman named Michelle Vey back in, 2004, I think, and to create a documentary film called Thread Documentary. If you go to threaddocumentary.com, you can watch the trailer. But it took a detour, which is kind of the name of the game of life, right? Just allow yourself to pivot as needed. And I ended up partnering with Amber Valletta. She's also, I think, very involved here at FIT and a model and an amazing environmental advocate. And Amber and I took the film concept to Lexus. Lexus funded it, and we created a 4-part documentary film series called Driving Fashion Forward with Amber Valletta. You can Google and watch the 4-part series, and they have different topics like humanity and timelessness. We had Diane Van Furstenberg in our timelessness video. And now that, the time has gone where we no longer have the exclusive with Lexus, we're bringing back the Thread documentary. And so just starting, Michelle is obviously, this is her creation. She's driving this forward. And this one will really focus on fashion and climate change. And so, we're just getting started, and we are going out to seek funding for this as well.
Oh, great. Amazing. What would you say at this stage is the greatest success in your career so far?
Well, when I coined the term eco-fashion, people thought I was crazy. People used to look at me like, okay, really, Marci? People in the fashion industry don't care about the environment and social justice and humanitarian issues. They're all about the material world. And people who are into consciousness and, the natural and organic and social and, environmental world don't care about fashion. We're going back now almost 30 years. And I was like, no, can't be the case, because I want both, right? And so I can't be the only one on this planet. And fast forward, it gets me so excited to see, how far this movement has come, and that, styling the world of change and changing the world of style and bridging the tree hugger and the fashionista or the tribe in the boardroom has happened. And now, everybody's drinking the proverbial, sustainability Kool-Aid, right? And getting that this is about all of us in this together. This is about, a shift of mindset, going back to those 5 C's and those being the principles of this rebirth of humanity, and why I wrote the book, which is, was a labor of love, but it connects art, food, wellness, beauty, fashion, and business, which are all the spokes in the wheel of change. And I've been involved in all of these different, industries in some way or another, touch them to realize that it is about, a holistic mindset. And so I guess my greatest achievement is to see how far the eco-fashion movement has come to where now it's like a new chapter in this industry. And, it leaves this blank canvas opportunity as artists, as creators, as designers, as humans, as citizens of this planet, to fill it in the way we see fit.
Yeah, well, that's great. So at the outset of class, we had, as a class, we came up with our 3 capstone questions that we wanted to ask all of our guests throughout the semester. And the first is, in a field of people who all want to be unique in hiring, what really catches your eye to set someone apart?
So I often ask people when I sit down with them in a job description, if you could create your own job description, what would that look like? What would it be? And I listen very carefully, because I believe people need to do what they love doing. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole, right? You want people to be happy in what they do. And I think that's kind of the impetus of this great resignation concept, right? People are not leaving the workforce. They're leaving jobs that don't serve them with purpose or with meaning. And I think at the end of the day, I've asked a lot of my team, because we're a startup, right? Even though I'm 30 years in the making, Eco Fashion Corp actually is only 3 years old, building off of my life work, and because I saw an industry need that I wanted to solve for. But, everybody who's working really hard should at least be where they want to be from the lens of doing the work they want to do, i.e. work is love made visible. So it really comes down to, when I listen to somebody, do they get who we are, what we're trying to do? Is it coming from a deeper place, why they're joining, my company? And, you look at companies out there today, like a Patagonia, right, where they put out a job description, or an Aileen Fisher, or a Reformation, or an Eco Fashion Corp. We have no problem with I put a job description, I get 300 applicants, right? Generally, it's because there's something bigger than who we are at play here. And purpose is something that, has become like a marketing concept. The brands and big corporate companies are learning, okay, how do we navigate this and attract the loyalty and the next generation that wants to be a part of something, bigger than just a paycheck. And I think that, to me, that is, who I am and what I look at when I'm hiring.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. If you had a chance to talk to yourself as a young graduate, what would your advice be to yourself?
Well, after, a lot of years of pivoting and changing course and moving, into different career segments, if you will, looking back, every single step I've taken was there for a reason. I'm a big believer everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to, right? So where I am today is a reflection of the journey I've been on and how each step led to the next step. So I would say don't get stuck in the muck. Like, absolutely do not see obstacles or perceived obstacles or challenges as roadblocks. See them as opportunities. It's all perspective, right? It goes back to climb that ladder of consciousness. When you change your perspective, you see challenges as opportunities to learn, to grow, to get smarter, stronger, better, clearer, right? You don't know what you want unless you know what you don't want. Right? And so that's personal and professional. So just remember, when you set out on your career trajectory, just don't get in a frenzy if something doesn't go the way you thought it was supposed to go, because that's just not the way life works. And if we start to embrace that mindset that it's okay when we, are stumbling or we fall, because we get to stand back up and we get to be smarter next time, right? So I always feel like, a little bit of a walking cliche, right? One door closes, another one opens. Just remember that. And remember that you have a choice every moment of every day, and make that choice positive. Make it one that keeps you moving forward, not backward, right? And getting stuck is a choice.
That's great. Thank you.
welcome.
With that, I would love to turn it over to the audience because I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there. Our lovely Vanna Rachel is going to run the mic around. It's actually right up there.
Thank you so much for being here, first of all. I am wondering, what is some things that we can start today that can help create an eco lifestyle for us?
So you're talking personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, well, number one, when you're looking at the food choices you're making, right, there are a lot of toxic chemicals that are not just affecting our human health, but environmental health. So, read the labels. I always say if you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't put it in your body. Moving on to clean beauty, there's just a proliferation now of brands that are non-toxic. Remember, the skin is the largest organ in your body, your primary organ for absorption, so what you put on your body matters, right? Just like food that you're feeding your body. So start looking at clean beauty options. And you can get them at Target and Walmart and Costco, then CVS and, Walgreens. This isn't about, the old school whole paycheck days where everything, food and, and beauty have to come from, and you have to spend your entire paycheck on them. And then fashion, if you can't afford new clothing, swap and thrift and be a part of the circular system, rent, reuse, try to move away from just this fast fashion mentality of I need more, and I'm just going to throw it away after one time using it. Wear it more often, when you're tired of it, change with your friends. And if you are going to buy new, buy smart, buy organic, buy regenerative, buy circular, and know the brands you're supporting and help support them even more to, continue growing and to leapfrog over the companies that are actually, polluting and degrading and depleting and destroying our future.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And my book really gives a lot of resources. So it's available on Amazon and it's available on, Target.com and Barnes & Noble, all the main sites, and at yesand.com, and yesand.style, I should say. And the book takes you, as I mentioned, through different categories, and at the end gives you a lot of resources. The end of each chapter, I highlight 40 people throughout the book, like 5 or 6 in each chapter, that I call my illuminartists. These are my modern-day Michelangelos, right, that are leveraging their own personal platforms to give advice and tips and to drive change through their own work. So you can, learn a lot by checking out Eco Renaissance as well.
Let's go right here.
In fashion nowadays, recycled fabric is well known and become more popular. But to recycle the fabric, you need a lot of water and electricity to reuse it again. Do you think it is worth it to do this for eco-fashion and sustainability? Yeah, so sometimes you have to look at choices as which one is doing less harm. And yes, is it perfect? No. And it's about better, not perfect, right? Recycling is better because you're not creating virgin fibers, you're not burning all the fossil fuels, depleting out of our, Earth's resources, and then creating waste, right? And then, looking at the amount of energy and water that's being used to create a virgin fiber is going to supersede, be more than if you are recycling. Granted, yes, in a recycling system, of course, you need to transport things. And that's why I think easy, for lack of a better, not recycling, but swapping, right? So instead of giving your post-consumer garment to a swap, a big box that's going to go into a big sorting center that's then going to go into, a mechanical, recycling center, and, there's a lot of layers to that. So there's ways that you can sort of take it upon yourself if you have the, desire to be a part of that solution in a more local way. And then, the Global Fashion Exchange is a great example. They hold these swaps. If you're not familiar with them, check it out. And everybody just comes with their own garments and swaps with each other. And it's great. And you can actually become an ambassador and create that. But from the standpoint of, trying to move away from virgin synthetic garments, because what people don't realize is, we talk a lot about soil and land ecosystems, but we also have to talk about water ecosystems, right? So every single synthetic garment ever produced in the history of mankind, we're talking about 70, 80 years worth of synthetics, polyester, acrylic, all of the synthetic fibers. When you wash them, they biodegrade. They don't biodegrade ever. They shed microfibers. And the microfibers go into your washing machines, then the rivers, then the oceans, the whole water system. And today, you'll see statistics ranging, but as high as 90% of fish tested are showing traces of microfibers from textiles. So a third of the plastic pollution in our oceans is textile microfibers, right? So wash your clothes less. Recycled fibers also, until we have solved for this, do also shed. But we've got to figure out every single way we can keep things out of, our water and our land degradation. We have to minimize waste, water use, energy use every way we can. And there's, we're just getting started. So a lot of work to do, no question. But yes, recycling is better than new. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Hi, so my question is, you talked a little bit on meta fashion, so my question is, what is your biggest concern for the future of AI fashion?
Of
AI.
AI fashion. It's like the singularity, right? Where the computers become smarter than we are, and then they start making their own decisions. Yeah, so that's like when technology,
Space Odyssey, 2001.
Yeah, Jason Silva.
No, I mean, look, as somebody who today, I'm celebrating technology because I believe that, the smarter we get, leveraging the power of technology, the more we can reduce impacts. And I've noticed that a lot of these big technology companies are actually looking at the fashion industry in a very serious way, or they're hanging their hat on it completely, because they know that this industry is such a huge, polluter, and we haven't had new systems in this industry for so long. And so, whether it's using, artificial intelligence for, being able to predict, trends or forecast buying, well, that's going to reduce waste, right? Because we're not going to make the wrong stuff. We're not going to make too much of something. And then, from the standpoint of as consumers, serving us to actually reduce returns, right? Like, I mean, you look at most apparel websites, returns can be 35% of, garments purchased. Well, there's energy to send it back, there's all the waste, there's so many impacts that we don't even think about that come from a lack of intelligence. So, are there negatives? Probably somewhere. Nothing's like popping in my head as like some, horrific concern, other than, when you talk about, some of the like Bitcoin stuff and harvesting energy and, where is the mines and where that's coming from. And that's, I think, ultimately, if we keep growing, these technologies, we have to be mindful about how to balance, creating a whole different set of problems, right, that we're trying to solve for. So, and there are people that much smarter than me that are sort of technology experts that are looking through that lens.
Hi, so I wanted to know your thoughts on familiarity, because like on a psychological standpoint, I feel like a lot of people's difficulty in making the switch to eco brands and sustainability is due to either one, conveniency, and two, feeling familiar with it. So I wanted to know, like, what advice would you give to maybe like families who don't have resources or funds and are more prone to just going to what's near them and what they've always grown up with?
Yeah, so I mean, I would liken that to, when you're sitting in a new restaurant, to try something you haven't tried before, because you don't know if you like it unless you try it. So I get the idea of like people are comfortable with what they know, and definitely you have to take a step out of the box to try something new across any part of your life, right? There are lots of ways to economically be a part of this movement of eco-fashion, right? So we talked about swapping and thrifting. I mean, my kids, they love going to thrift stores, all right? And that's not, like, oh, I can't afford it. And there are thrift stores everywhere, right? There are online thrift stores now, right? There are sales going on at these sites. Like, take advantage of them and try, when you want to taste something new, try something new. Try something that's on sale, right? And I think that as you learn, it's not about more, right? The whole fast fashion mentality is how much can you get for the cheapest price possible. Buy less, but buy well, right? Something that's going to last and hold up, and something that you can swap with somebody eventually, right? Something that you feel good about. And you won't know, and I used to say this with IIN too, like, don't believe anything that I say, just try it. Because once you put it on your body and it becomes an extension of who you are and a way you can express yourself, and it ultimately starts to sink in, like, you know what, somebody just complimented this dress, me in this dress, and I got to tell them what it's made of and where it was made and who made it. Suddenly, like, you become a part of this movement in ways you don't even realize, and that just reinforces your desire that next time you're gonna do a little, you might look online, for new brands to try. And I have to say, especially with Metawear, I see it, how many new brands are popping up all the time. And the reason that I started Metawear really was to help them get where they want to go, because you can be vulnerable to missteps if you just rely on like a factory that doesn't know what they're doing and they tell you, yeah, we'll get you organic or regenerative cotton or, recycled. And how do you really know? I mean, the three stigmas that always existed with sustainable fashion, even when I go back to the beginning of my career, and they probably still exist to some level, is number one, that you have to give up style, quality, fit, color, or comfort, right? I always say, start with, giving people what they want in design. Okay, then the second stigma, you have to pay a lot more. Well, if you're vertically integrated and you're efficient and you know how to start at the source and build up the supply chain, or you partner with others to consolidate, your buys so that you can get more efficient on buying yarn or buying fabric, or you can partner with factories. There's so many ways to actually build more vertical integration into your supply chain and cut out the endless middlemen that are in every single layer. So a garment in a supply chain can change hands sometimes 10 times, right? Like in a cotton, product, from the farm to the gin, to the spinning, to the knitting or weaving, to the cutting, sewing, dyeing, printing, embroidery, packaging, shipping. I mean, there's so many layers, right? So when you start to unpack all of that and start working directly with suppliers or, partners who are working directly with the whole chain, then you can actually add value without adding cost. So at MetaWear, we actually produce for some of the biggest retailers in the world. During COVID, we launched 2 brands with QVC that were, very affordable brands, right? But no compromise on quality or design or style. So seed to style and farm to home. We see other brands out there that, are doing the same thing at much higher cost, much higher margin. But I wanted to, make sustainable fashion accessible and really democratize sustainable fashion for the exact reason you're asking. Because people think, oh, I have to be really rich to buy sustainable fashion, and that's not the truth. And then the third stigma is, how do you really know? And that's where certifications come in, and working with or buying and supporting brands and companies that are doing that work. Because it's not easy work, right? But at least that, and it's not a perfect system either. There are, sometimes missteps that happen, but for the most part, you can rely on, certified product from good certification bodies, because they're third-party audited.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right over here.
Do you see a shift of the younger generation with interest in importance of sustainability, or do you see more of a divide with those who buy like secondhand and slow fashion versus fast fashion, for example, like Shein and Zara, who's notorious for the really rapid production cycle?
Yeah, well, when you Google now, it's like Boohoo or Shein, or you'll see a lot of greenwashing, media covering that, they're trying to slap the word sustainable. So you want to go deeper and make sure that there's either a certification behind the product and or, something that you're buying, if you really want to get behind sustainable fashion, that it's done the right way. Because what you don't want is, to go to support a fast fashion retailer thinking like, oh, just because, they're using that word in their media press release, that it means that everything you're buying there is sustainable, right? So the mindset around fast fashion, you have to remember that, every action has a reaction, right? Cause and effect. So everything that they're doing, going from 1 season or 2 seasons, or call it 4 seasons a year, which is how the fashion industry used to operate, to 52 plus seasons a year. Think of the energy use, the water use, the chemical use, that is part of that process, right? And the climate effects, right? Because of all the impacts that are just inherent in production. So look for and make choices that are supporting your own value and values, and there are fast fashion retailers that are doing more than others, and there are now laws that are coming, right? There are bills that are in Congress right now that are going to be holding a lot of these companies accountable. So they're already starting to try to react to that and say, okay, how do we work with better suppliers, make sure we're more transparent, make sure we're using better fibers and materials, and by virtue of their scale, if they do it right, some of them, they can actually solve for things that, need scale to innovate on, right? So that, I'm not one of these people that like says, don't, they're the devil, because to some extent they're victims of their own business models, right? This is who they are. So how do we help them and support the good things that they're doing when they do them to show them they need to do more of that and not the rest of it, right? So I wouldn't say it has to be a black and white thing, but the companies that are out there that are across the board doing deep work. I mean, I could tell you, companies like Madewell, right? Like, they're in the trenches. They're really trying to do amazing work out there. There's a number of these companies that are at the front lines. And so the Fabric Act, the New York Fashion Sustainability Act, and in Norway, there was just a bill that was, put in, or a law that was put into effect around greenwashing. This is just the beginning of where government's stepping in, and it's going to start, lighting a fire under some of those companies, and some of them will fall. I mean, we've already seen Forever 21 fall. We've already seen, a number of others that are sort of right behind them that are, that just didn't stay relevant. And staying relevant means you've got to start making steps forward. It doesn't mean you have to get from A to Z overnight, but also not just beware, be aware, right? Like, know when go deeper in terms of research when you want to buy a product at these places, that it's not just a fake or a greenwashing claim, right?
Yeah.
But yes, to your generation and the generations after you, this isn't going away. It's only going to get bigger and more important to future generations. A, because of the climate crisis. B, because people now have that information, that these impacts are there. I think that the old worlds of marketing and advertising and fashion were very much about talking at people through, ads that you would see on television or in the fashion magazines, and people didn't have any way to go deeper, like, pull the curtain back and unveil the human and environmental impacts of the products they were buying. Today you can. You can actually learn about the brands and the products and see what's behind them. So try to, jump into that as best as you can, within your own aesthetic. That I think today there's mass to class, there's major retailers, and then there's brand new up and coming designers, and at every price point you'll find sustainable options today.
Any more questions out there? Are there any up above?
Who else? Should we do the first raffle?
Yeah. Let's do
My
it.
phone is. You know what? Will you guys go on raise your hand if you posted. Okay. Did you tag yes and? Did everybody tag yes and? Okay, so call out the first name. But I'm
Drum roll. Might show up in requests.
Can you-
sometimes?
I didn't bring my phone up. Logistical. Tatum? Tatum! Congratulations.
Yay!
All right, so after, do you want to come down now, or should we do
Yeah,
that?
here. I can run it up.
Okay, cool.
I think you were my student last spring, right? Yay!
Enjoy. Okay, who else? Soraya, come on down.
Another person up there? Okay.
And remember, also as a reminder, if you want to go on yesand.style, use the code LOVE22. And wear the love, be the love, share the love. Everything is made with love. That's our mantra.
And lucky number 3?
Okay, lucky number 3, 33. Another one of my numbers.
Marianne?
Ariane, there you go. Marianne? Marian.
There I am. Oh my gosh, three from up above.
Congratulations. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for, being on this journey wherever you are. And remember, the spectrum, it's a wide spectrum from light to dark, right? So just keep moving, one step at a time, and enjoy the ride. It is, this is such a fun journey because there's so much to learn. So look at that as an incredible and exciting, opportunity. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you for being here. This is lovely. For current students in my class, I have an end of class survey that I'm going to email to you to answer. Keep in mind, it's actually an anonymous mid-semester check-in survey, but there is a question at the end to email me to get end of class credit. So sending that out to you now. If you have anything for me, come on down.